The Maple Leafs start the preseason with a loss to the Ottawa Senators. What did we like? What didn't we like? And what else is happening within Maple Leafs training camp? We'll get to all that more on today's edition of the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Locked On Leafs podcast, a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast hosted by myself, Mike DiStefano, and my co-host, Dave Morassutti. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Please place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. What's going on, Dave? How you feeling on a Monday?
Not too bad, not too bad. We finally got hockey back.
Hockey's back. It returned in full force. Got our first little taste of action Saturday night. Watched a little bit. Watched some puck. Watched a couple of games. And then Sunday night, we had, it was kind of full go. You had the Maple Leafs in action. So got a chance to watch the Buds and the new look Maple Leafs go toe-to-toe against the Ottawa Senators. Unfortunately, it did not turn out the way I think a lot of Maple Leafs fans were hoping. A 6-5 loss in overtime. It was a bit of a sloppy game, to say the least. Took the Leafs a little bit to find their footing. But overall, Dave, what did you make of the game?
It felt like I was watching the same old Leafs, in my opinion. I don't think this was... No, this did not look like the new Leafs that maybe people were expecting. This felt like a lot like a Sheldon Keefe coached Leafs team.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's still a lot of guys who were here during the Sheldon Keefe era, and they need to, have some habits coached out of them, right? Like, it's one game, it's the first game. There's no need to overreact. I'm not saying you're overreacting. I'm letting the people watching who are like, oh, this is it. The same Leafs, same problem. Trade Marner. I saw this stuff on Twitter, especially when you look at the two rosters, right? Like the Senators, it was basically the Belleville Sens that they were playing. There was a lot of there's a big discrepancy. Leafs had pretty well a full roster, and then the Senators went out with kind of a half and half roster, a couple of good players, but lots of guys who are probably junior or AHL bound. So that also didn't help either when you look at that. But it's going to take some time for Berube's identity or the way he wants to play to settle in with this team. It usually takes a little bit for a team to get going. So I wouldn't be too worried about that. I guess I wasn't surprised that they still had like Keefe habits. They've been playing that way for 5-6 years. Like that's how they know how to play, right? So I guess it doesn't surprise me that was the case, but it did look like they started to finally find their footing in the third period there.
Well, of course, right? Like, Craig Berube even said after the game that what they did in the third period, that's what they need to start doing for a full 60 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And we've heard that one before, right? Can't just be a 20-minute, a one-period team. You need to do that for all 60 minutes. So, again, it wasn't I wouldn't say that, like, I'm not saying, like, there should be a massive concern, because guess what? This is what the preseason is supposed to do. The coaches are going to find things that they're going to need to clean up, and they're going to clean it up.
Yeah, 100%. You got some early chemistry though. Nice scoring the first goal. Nice little feed from Marner, able to go top shelf. So it's like, nice showing off that finish. You like to see that. Obviously, Pacioretty had a big game with a couple of goals. You saw Tanev pick up some points. Nikita Grebenkin getting into a scrap. Not something I had on my bingo card, but it was nice to see Grebenkin get involved. And overall, I think that, yes, it wasn't a great game by the Leafs by any stretch of the imagination, but considering how they're outshot 15-2 in the first period, and we're still able to kind of, slow play themselves through the first couple. You rep for 4 goals on 24 shots in the third period. Patches got a couple. you're going to just take it as is and move on to the next game, which is going to be Tuesday, I believe, against the same Ottawa Senators. So we'll see what that second group can look like. But I was excited to see a couple of players in this game. Obviously, Pacioretty being one of them, Chris Tanev, a lot of the new guys, Easton Cowan as well. And I thought that actually all three of those players, were decent tonight. Definitely got involved on the score sheet. We know Pacioretty had a couple of goals. Tanev picked up 3 points. That was one thing too. Tanev got a lot of praise for his puck moving ability. I watched him for a very long time. I remember watching him quite often when he was with Vancouver, and that is an underrated skill set that he does have. A lot of people look at Tanev and they're like, elite defensive defenseman. Yes, true. But he's got a great first pass out of the zone, a great first pass. So, having that ability, along with the block shots, the warrior nature, I think Leaf fans are going to understand that Tanev is, not necessarily the whole package. He doesn't have a shot. He's not going to wow you with his skating defense in the offensive end or deep, dipsy dangle like Quinn Hughes does, but he's got a nice little first pass, good, and that could really start with good, solid breakouts. I think you saw that more in the third period where the breakouts were a lot more crisp, and I think it led to he was the one who got up to Pacioretty for his second goal, if I'm not mistaken. Nice little chip play up the patches, and he kind of ripped it from outside the circle and kind of squeaked in there. But yeah, overall, again, not a game that you're going to overreact to. It's a loss to a not so great team, but hey, it's the preseason. There's not a whole lot that matters at this point. If it was game 1 of 82, probably would feel a little bit different, but there's still 6 more preseason games to go, and then the real stuff begins. Why don't we take a break? We'll come back. We'll get to the good, the bad, the ugly, the first installment of Good, Bad, and Ugly on the year, and continue to kind of talk a little bit about the Leafs loss to the Ottawa Senators on game 1 of the preseason. So that's coming up next. I'm Mike DiStefano with Dave Morassutti. You're listening to the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active users. PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. If you want to play PrizePicks alongside guys like Drewski, Joe Budden, Sugar, Sean O'Malley, you can now find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries of some of the biggest names in the PrizePick community each week. PrizePicks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy so that your lineups stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. If your player receives in the first half and doesn't return, PrizePicks keeps your picks alive. PrizePicks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. Download the PrizePicks app today and use the code LOCKEDONNHL and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONNHL on PrizePicks to get a $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game.
Today's show is also brought to you by Indeed. We're driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. So join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of the show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility, all at Indeed.com/lockedon. So just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. Mike DiStefano and Dave Morassutti with you as we are each and every weekday, Monday through Friday, 5 days a week. It's all Leafs all the time, and we're getting things started with our first installment of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. If you're new to the podcast, new to the channel, we do this after each and every Maple Leafs game. We go through the good and the bad and the ugly. It's pretty self-explanatory, really. And there was quite a bit of ugly, but we'll start with the good, Dave. We'll start with the good. What did you like from tonight's game?
I mean, it's hard to not look at Max Pacioretty's 2-goal game. Like, that was the standout for me, considering he's on a tryout. When you're on a tryout, you gotta do your best to show out, and he did. And it wasn't just the goals too. Like, he was a very pronounced player physically, doing the little things to get himself into positions to score. So I liked what I saw from Max Pacioretty, and I could see why it was a big deal for him to be brought in even on a PTO.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. Obviously, anytime you come in and you're fighting for a spot, right? Like technically, it's a PTO, but it sounds like it's just we'll just wait to see how much cap we have left, and then we'll make it work. But sounds like he's going to be a Maple Leaf regardless. But starting off with a couple of goals definitely, strengthens your case to be part of this team full time, right? And if you're a guy like Max Pat or you're a guy like Nick Robertson, you don't love to see what's going on, right? Pacioretty with a couple of goals, Nikita Grebenkin with a big fight, and he looked pretty good too in that game. So, the guys who you're competing with, if you're Robertson, they stood out in game one. They stood out in night one of the preseason. But yeah, Max Pacioretty for sure, I think was a star for the Maple Leafs, I would say. Close behind was Tanev. I talked a little bit about him, but picks up 3 assists in the game and really was moving the puck as much as he could. I thought Tanev played pretty well. And then, anytime you can get a couple of tilts with Grebenkin and Revo, it's always nice to see.
Oh yeah, and the Revo fight was funny just because he got hit from behind. He turns around, he's like, "Who did that?" And
little name check,
little name check. But then he's like, "All right, we're dropping I'm blanking on the
Brango.
Yeah, so he drops the gloves. I'm like, I don't think you're gonna want to do this, man. And he almost like the instant regret when he dropped the gloves and Reeves drops the gloves, and it's like, oh, okay, like, we're doing this, and then. Yeah, so that was fun. The Grebenkin one too, like him pumping up the crowd was kid knows how to get himself in the good graces of Leafs fans. He's already become a fan favorite.
Yeah, and look, man, like he's somebody who's trying to make this team out of camp, and he's being given opportunity, right? Like I think a lot of people wish that Easton Cowan or even Nick Robertson was, given the opportunity that Grebenkin's been given so far in camp. He had a chance. I think he was on the second power play unit as well. And look, he's got the size and the ability to play that north-south style that the coach wants, and he's talked about that, right? Like a couple of times, he's spoke glowingly about Grebenkin early in camp, and then obviously you see him go out there and get into a fight in his first night, and last night you ask the coach like, "Hey, Chief, what'd you think of that Grebenkin tilt?" And what'd you say to him when he got to the bench? He said, "I said good for you." And that's great, and he's a guy who's fighting for a job here with the Maple Leafs, and he's making a good early impression on the coach. That's for sure. So he's at this point, he's probably like the dark horse, player that could fight and grab a spot here with the main club, which would have a couple other guys who are in camp a little bit worried, like Lorentz, who's on a PTO, Pontus Holmberg, or obviously a Nick Robertson. So that's it's good to see. That's what you want. You want competition. You want someone to stand out amongst the rest. And so far, Grebenkin doing a pretty good job of that. The bad, Dave. What was bad? What didn't you like in this game?
So I probably say the Matt Murray wasn't a great showing for him in his kind of. Am I expecting Matt Murray to be, the old Matt Murray? No,
I think either goalie was all that good, to be honest.
The Wall was really good in the first period. The Leafs were outshot
15-2.
15-2. and there were some saves he needed to make. Otherwise, that game would have been way out of hand.
True. I
But
thought
there
a
were
couple of
two
the
other
goals.
goals. The other two goals, though, were not
No,
great.
squeakers. Like, it's just stuff
Yeah.
you got it. Now again, it's early, it's preseason. You're not as crisp. You're not getting, I don't know, like tight like you should be and would be. So you'll let those kind of slide. But yeah, and I didn't think it was a great night from either goaltender, I suppose. But again, it's early preseason.
Like Matt Murray did not look as good. Like I thought Joseph Woll, yeah, second period wasn't his best. The Leafs also just sloppy with
Very.
their like the second goal especially. Like he made a couple of good saves. He's got two defensemen that are not even in the play really. Like Liljegren's got his back turned. He's like on the ground. Weber is trying to play goalie too. I don't know what that was. Cade Webber didn't have a great game in my opinion either. He was someone that I think was maybe trying to do a little too much.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like there was a little bit of that, but yeah, like I didn't like the third goal that Woll gave, especially that one was like like give him that one, and you're like I think the Leafs would have had a better chance in the it wouldn't matter if win or lose in this game, but I just like that one there wasn't my favorite.
Yeah. Yeah. Nope. I completely agree. Yeah, Cade Webber's interesting. It seems like so I fired out a tweet yesterday ahead of the game with the rosters, and I was like, who are people excited to watch in this game? I listed off a couple players that I was excited to keep an eye on, but a lot of people had Cade Webber that they were, as their player to watch, and I think we need to pump the brakes on Cade Webber. Like, it seems like for whatever reason, a lot of Leaf fans feel like he's close to like making the team. He's on the cusp of pushing for a roster spot. I don't think that's the case. And I think last night you saw, he was exposed quite a bit. Like, yes, he's a big player, he's a big boy. He's that's the size and style that we want to see from this team that Tree Living and Berube loves. But this is a guy who was playing in college a year ago and probably will need some time to adjust. I would expect him to be, part of the American League team this year, more of a Marley than a Maple Leaf. So I think people need to pump the brakes a little bit on Cade Webber. I'm not sure we see him play a single game in the pro or in the NHL this year. And he was exposed yesterday for kind of a lack of I don't know if I want to call it experience, but there definitely were times where he was caught in yesterday's game. For me, I also thought, which a completely different end of the spectrum when it comes to experience. Oliver Ekman-Larsson, who's a very experienced player, I didn't think he looked very good last night either. A couple of lost puck battles behind the net, leading to goals. Looked lost a little bit. OEL, I thought could have definitely had a better first showing in front of Maple Leaf fans than he did.
Yeah, there was one goal especially. I mean, I'm losing track of how because they scored so many goals last night. But there was one where he's in front of the net and looking for. He's like kind of like looking for the puck or something.
And
That
he's
goes
just like,
off.
"What's going on? What's going on?" All of a
Yeah,
sudden, it's in the back of the net, and it's like, dude, what are you doing?
it was
Like,
him and
take a
Jake
man.
McCabe
Take a
really
man
just
if that's the case. Like, when you're puck watching, take a man. If you don't know where the puck is, okay, take
yeah.
your man, tie him up,
That's
right?
really what it is, right? And like him and Jake McCabe didn't exactly look great together. I mean, I didn't think either one looked impressive in my opinion. So, yeah, that again, that's just another one of those you're getting used to playing with someone
Yeah.
as well, right? This is the first time that McCabe and OEL are playing together, right? So there's a little bit of that, but yeah, I think there's going to be some lessons drilled into what to do and what not to do in front of your net.
Yeah. Yeah. Completely agree. And the ugly. The first period couldn't have went any worse. I mean, I guess it could have went worse. Joseph Woll could have been a lot worse, I suppose. But outshot 15-2. The ice was tilted pretty much the whole way. Took a couple of dumb penalties. Um, the first period was just ugly. Not what I expected either. Like, I expected for the team to actually start on time. I don't know why. I should know better by now, I suppose. But I thought, new coach, new coaching staff, they're going to want to go out and prove, that they're worthy and impose their dominance. Like, again, it was, you look at the two rosters, you're looking at pretty much, I would say, like an 80% Maple Leafs team against what was maybe 25-30% of a Senators team. Like there was a lot of guys who aren't going to be on the NHL roster that were playing last night, and they got absolutely bullied in the first period. It was insane. I did not expect to see it. It was ugly. It was tough to watch. It was very sloppy. They couldn't break the puck out. It was ugly. I guess that's the word to use.
Yeah, it was ugly. It was ugly just because like you're looking at who the Leafs lost to, right? Like again, it wasn't the Senators A lineup. Yeah, there were a couple of NHLers there.
It was
Yakimchuk,
it was like
like
30% of NHLers and 70% like junior and
yeah,
AHL guys. Like
like Carter Yakimchuk, he looked like you know a first overall pick in this game with the way that he's a seventh overall pick. I'm not throwing it like he's a pretty decent player, decent
pretty
prospect.
good, man. Like that game winner was pretty slick. I'll give him
Yeah,
that.
oh, it
Nice,
was. Yeah, it was just also like the defending on that was like McCabe and Marner. I don't know what they were expecting to happen with the way that they defended that, but it was a great play by him. But yeah, it was just like the Stars took time to and Berube kind of said it, like we were too cute, right? You got the puck on your stick, do something with it, like be assertive. Do again? It's these habits they're gonna have to get out of, right? And this is where you need a coach like Berube to really force it out of these guys and
yeah.
not let this be the standard, right? Don't oh, we almost came back, we almost won it. No, you guys put yourselves in a hole that should never have been, and now that's something we're gonna have to really work to clean out of you.
Yeah. And look, it's pretty much this team wants to play north south, and they've been playing a lot of east west for a very long time, and they play a lot of perimeter hockey, or they have played a lot of perimeter hockey and dominated the possession game, but not necessarily bringing it to the inside as often as you'd like. And that's kind of what Berube wants his team to start doing. So we saw that a little bit, I suppose, later on in the game, far more north south style game. And I would imagine we'll see a lot more of it Tuesday when they play their next one against the Ottawa Senators, and then continuing forward all the way until we get to opening night against the Montreal Canadiens, where I would hope by then the team has started to pick up on the habits that Berube is trying to instill, and try and wither away those old ones under Sheldon Keefe. And it's not like Sheldon Keefe was a good coach. I don't want to make it seem like this guy was a bum and
Yeah.
didn't have the Leafs playing well. They were playing great. But if you want to stick to certain systems, systems work best when you play a certain way. You can't have a north south structured defensive system if you're going to play if you're not going to play that way. It's just not going to work out. You're going to have lots of breakdowns, and that's what we saw happen in the first period. It was just a bit of a mismatch type of situation. So until they learn how to play that way, until the identity comes through, there are going to be some growing pains. And I would imagine early in the season, there's still going to be some growing pains, and then eventually, they'll get cooking. A month or so into the season, and then we'll start to say, okay, we can see the team turning into forming an identity, turning into, that Berube style game. I think it'll take some time, but they'll get there. They'll get there, buddy. All right, we'll take one break. We'll come back. You can get to any final thoughts you had on the game if you want to make some final thoughts. But there was also an interesting interview at the intermission with Mitch Marner and Elliotte Friedman. Marner speaking on his contract situation. We'll get to that on the other side as well. You're listening to the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. It's Mike DiStefano and Dave Morassutti with you each and every day. You can find the Locked On Leafs podcast wherever you get your podcast from. You can also find us up on YouTube. We are on the road to 10K. We'd like to get to 6K at least by the start of the season. I think we're only like 125 away, I want to say, from getting that. So that's not terribly attainable. So if you've enjoyed the podcast so far, you've made it this far, we would ask that you give us a follow, give us a subscribe as well. You can reach out to us on Twitter or X at Mickey_Canuck for myself, at D_Morassutti for Dave, and follow the show as well at Locked On Leafs. Any final kind of words you want on the preseason game, or do you want to just move on to the Marner Friedman chat?
I think we've talked enough about the game. We can move on.
All right. So first intermission, we saw a little feature interview with Mitch Marner and Elliotte Friedman. I presume this happened at like the media day that they had in Vegas a couple of weeks ago. Actually, it could have also happened, I suppose, media day with the Maple Leafs last week. But either way, it was prearranged, obviously. What stood out to you from that chat?
And a little bit of obviously a different tone than what we got from that like opening statement from him, right? I think he's trying, and look, I don't blame him. He's trying to control this whole contract talk situation. We've known this for a bit, but like him not being willing to take questions, right? But doing that interview kind of suggests that he's trying very hard to control the narrative, right? Something that he's always kind of wanting to do. When he talks about things that he doesn't like that the media reports about him, when he calls them out with that, and then with the statement that he made and things like that, I think it's at least I'll give him credit in that he said that his desire is to stay in Toronto. Like he didn't say that the other day, which again we talked about that. Like it's not hard to say that. He should have said that the first time.
Yeah, me kind of did, but it was like more of in a follow-up answer. But yeah,
yeah,
not
right.
his original.
It wasn't his original thought that right. I mean, I think the original question was, do you want to? Like, are you willing to
Well,
sign a
he
contract?
didn't even take a question. It was from Friedman. You mean?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Like it was more of like is he comfortable signing a contract during the season? Because some athletes or players are just like, if I don't get anything by this time, don't talk to me, which I never understood. Like teams aren't calling the player each day asking about a contract. That's why you pay an agent a lot of money.
Yes.
To get this done, right? So there was that, but yeah, I do think that again, we're still not. It didn't provide much clarity, right, in terms of what he's really looking for, right? And he's not going to shed light on that because that's giving up a negotiation tactic that he's using.
Not going to come out and say, yeah, I want 12 million. If they give me 12 million, I'm going to sign, or whatever it is. That's the number I believe. That's my guess, by the way. 12 million is a number that makes both sides happy, I think is kind of the happy medium there. Yeah, I mean, I do just really quickly, there was something that you mentioned there before you got into the thing. His tone, the tone was different, right? He was more willing to talk, I suppose, to Friedman in a one-on-one setting.
Yeah.
And I guess I can sympathize with that on like a human level. Like it is a lot easier to have a one-on-one discussion with a reporter who you have, a lot of respect for, like Friedman, one of the best in the game, and kind of what's going on. So I guess I can understand why he's more willing to speak in that setting as opposed to on media day. But the fact that like you're just not comfortable having a conversation like this with the media, the full media, I just for some reason bugs me. Like you were willing to have this chat, you're willing to talk about your contract in a one-on-one with Friedman, but then all of a sudden when you show up on media in your day and you're like, I'm not answering any questions about this. Don't even ask me. It's like, okay, all right, whatever. And at least he did speak to someone, and we got to see it and hear it from the horse's mouth that there's interest. He wants to remain, and he's willing to negotiate into the season. So I guess we did get some of our questions answered. It was just a week later than maybe we wanted to, I suppose. So just a little, I guess, side rant that I wanted to make about that. But I think, look, Mitch Marner's a terrific player, though. Ultimately, I think the Maple Leafs are better off keeping him than letting him walk for sure. So hopefully something does get done. It's obviously going to depend on the number, but I've seen some crazy things where people like Mitch is going to want like $13 million. I don't believe that. Do you believe that? Do you believe that Mitch is going to ask for $250,000 less than Austin Matthews? Like, I don't see it happening.
I don't.
Like, how can you possibly justify it?
Like, I just think the pecking order has been established. It is Austin Matthews first, and there's a big gap. There's a gap right now. Nylander's at 11.5. It's not right.
12 million. Boom. You know, all right. You're getting $500,000 more than Nylander.
Mhm.
You know, like you the days where you're a $5 million more player than Nylander are gone.
Yeah,
Like, it's just that's not the case anymore. Like, Nylander has certainly closed the gap there.
I think so. Right, like offensively, they're pretty close. Right, Marner's got maybe a bit more because of his playmaking ability, but like
Nylander scores goals.
yeah, Nylander scores more. Yeah, Marner plays the PK. Are we going to value that extremely higher? Like Matthews
Yeah,
played the
I would.
Matthews played the PK.
Fair.
Yeah, Matthews played the PK last night. That was one thing actually we didn't talk about. They were kind of just rotating guys, but I think that was just more of an experiment than what they really want to do.
Yeah. Well, yeah, Berube said he did that purposely
Yeah.
just to see what works. Throw poop at the wall, see what sticks kind of approach on that.
I will agree with you that like if you're looking at why Marner would be $500,000 more than Nylander, it's because of those defensive things, right? Because like offensively, it's not enough for me to say that Marner's worth more than Nylander. So I do value the goal scoring a little bit. Like playmaking is necessary, but I value the guys that can put the puck in the net just a little bit more.
Yeah. The thing with Marner is like he's had 30 goal seasons before too. Like, it's not like the guy doesn't score at all. Like, I don't know. I personally, if I think Willie's probably a bit overpaid. If I had to be honest, like I think Willie's probably closer to a $10 million player.
I do think we did know that because the Leafs had their backs against the wall with that one.
Totally, and it is what it is. But like just to say, oh, I think Marner's only worth $500,000 more than Willie, I think is a little disingenuous. But I think he can only get $500,000 more than Willie based on what Marner's worth. Like just because they overpaid Nylander, and that's where it's going to come in. It's like you overpaid him, or you paid him properly. You gonna pay me properly now and give me 13 million? Like that. That's where the Marner camp is gonna dig their heels in, and hopefully it doesn't get to that. But I mean, we saw it go there the first time around. Why wouldn't it the second time around?
It will definitely go that way the second time around.
Probably, but I would think the Maple Leafs number's 12. I would be surprised if they went any further than that. That's my opinion on the contract, and we'll see where it goes. We will see where it goes, my friend. All right. I think that'll do it for today's edition of the Locked On Leafs podcast. I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast on all platforms and receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself on Twitter at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Dave at D_Morassutti, and follow the show as well at Locked On Leafs. We'll be back with another episode for you guys tomorrow. We'll tee up game number 2 of the preseason. But until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.